Hey, welcome back. For over 3 years, I've been working with people who were there and people who know about what really happened in Rendelsham Forest. Everything that I've learned in over 3 years of research points to the fact that it probably was an advanced weapons system test that went horribly wrong, injuring US service personnel. To understand who, what, where, when, and why, you need to understand the history of British directed energy weapons. My research reveals a direct timeline from the birth of radar through Rendlesham to advanced UAP technology. It's a big story. So today, let's bust some myths that you have been told in your history books about the birth of radar, because what you were told isn't the full story. And that's really how it all started. Germany was rebuilding its army against the Treaty of Versailles. Thousands of fighters and bombers that could be used for World War II. And Britain, as a plucky nation, had a few biplanes, a good idea with the Hurricane and the Spitfire, but there was no way that Britain could ever monitor its entire coastline from attack by enemy aircraft. You'd have to have aircraft in the air looking for bombers and fighters approaching Britain all the time. That wasn't going to happen. We had a number of airfields, mainly in the east of England, smart, because they faced the North Sea in Germany, and on the south coast of England, which was a far bigger problem, which I'll discuss in a minute. We needed to know when the enemy was coming. If we could know an enemy aircraft's speed, direction, and height, Britain could muster its few fighter planes, its Spitfires, to take off and attack the incoming wave of enemy aircraft. But how do you do that? Well, this is where history books let us all down. They tell this sanitized, cat's eyes eating carrot story of radar, when the real story is still secret. And I want to reveal those secrets to you. So in all the films, the TV programs, and the books you read about Robert Watson Watt and how he developed radar, they're missing out what came first. Watson Watt was a weatherman. He lived in Scotland and he was interested in the ionosphere. He had no connection with the military even. It wasn't until Nikola Tesla tried to sell Chamberlain his death ray, and Britain stole Tesla's plans out of the safe in his bedroom in London and sent him packing, that the wild notion of a directed energy weapon that could defend Britain came to the attention of the Ministry of Defence. And again, your history books let you down. We're told that Tizard and his committee put out a project to see if madcap British shed inventors could boil water at 100 feet using radio waves. Well, I can tell you now, just stop that nonsense, because the British government took it very seriously, and there was a parallel science development. This man, Dr. Hill, worked out how to kill a human using radio frequency. A secret research station in Suffolk at Orford Ness experimented on killing sheep at 100 feet. And none of the British research into directed energy weapons was going well. The reason was Britain didn't pay Nikola Tesla for the full plans. Although they stole them from his safe, the key bits of information to make the Tesla death ray work was only in Tesla's head. And because they hadn't paid him, he went back to America and Britain tried to build it themselves, missing the key points. So in semi-desperation, they asked a weatherman in Scotland who knew about the ionosphere if he could help. Robert Watson Watt was a brilliant guy. He looked at the Tesla death ray problem and said, "It might be possible. Let me have a research station and a bit of a grant, and I'll tell you if I can make it work." So in a classic British way, in a shed or in a few huts, Robert Watson Watt tried to make Tesla's death ray work, and he couldn't. At the time, the sticking point was power. They didn't have the vacuum tubes of high enough output to make RF energy to travel hundreds of miles and kill things. It was never going to work. And here's the first secret I'm going to tell you. Robert Watson Watt dabbled in death rays, but death rays have got nothing to do with radar. In fact, the whole concept of radio beams being modulated by things in the air was already known. BBC engineers knew that their radio transmissions were interfered by aircraft flying through the beam. All the BBC was worried about was how it interfered with their transmitters. And in fact, they contacted the post office to look into it, who confirmed that aircraft flying through an RF signal would make it wobble. And that was the end of the problem. But that wobble was known about, caused by aircraft flying in the sky through an RF beam. So Robert Watson Watt thought that the wobble might be useful. So the first part of radar was looking at the BBC Home Service wobble. Robert Watson Watt didn't even have a radio transmitter, so he used the one at BBC Daventry and organised for a plane, an aircraft, to fly through the beam while he measured if it wobbled. And it did. He got an echo back from the plane when it interfered with the BBC test broadcast. Robert Watson Watt was so excited, even though he didn't have any of the equipment really working, he went straight to London to the Ministry of Defence and said, "I can see a plane flying in the air at a great distance." And they loved the idea. Although Britain had almost no resources, Britain is an island nation. That thin band of sea round the island of Great Britain would buy us time. But it's useless. Having a radio direction finding technique that only gives you 3 minutes. By the time you've scrambled your Spitz, the Germans have dropped their bombs on Lowestoft. The Air Ministry got involved in this secret project and told the Ministry of Defence, we would need 20 minutes. And that was time to scramble the Spitz and intercept the incoming enemy bombers. And this is my second big secret in this film. Robert Watson Watt was an engineer. He worked in the metric system. And he figured out that his radar, or RDF as he called it, could work at about 150 kilometers. So he told the Ministry of Defence he could see planes 150 km out across the North Sea. You can guess what I'm going to say. The Ministry of Defence thought he meant miles and said, "Jolly good, old chap, over 100 miles. That gives us fighter pilots the time to intercept those Huns." It was more like 40 miles, but Robert Watson was given the chance to increase the range of his system, which he eventually did. What the radar team soon discovered is that a single mast scanning the horizon was no good. But if you could have multiple masts in a chain, you could protect the vulnerable coast of East Anglia and the south coast of England. And the chain home system was built that all had to communicate and share their information. And seconds counted. As soon as a blip turned up, you needed to know its direction, its height, and its speed, so you could scramble your spits. But there was no point in phoning up the airfield and telling them and writing down where it was. No, you needed to get the aircraft up in the air and have a system of telling the lead pilot where to go once he was airborne. And that's how they did it. British fighters would take off not knowing where their target was, and then they were given a heading and a height for an intercept. And here's interesting fact number 3 that I really didn't know. That worked jolly well over the North Sea. You could see those Germans coming over the coast of Germany, which gave you time to scramble and intercept them over the North Sea, where dogfights were way off the coast of Britain. But that was never going to work in the south coast of England. The English Channel is tiny, and that's why we have so many amazing pictures like this. Dogfights over the Garden of England, over Kent, south of London. There just wasn't time to intercept the aircraft over the English Channel. By the time they found them, they were already over Kent. We need to thank Robert Watson Watt for saving British bacon and bringing the world the concept of radar. But all the time a parallel program was going on in the hallowed halls of Cambridge and Oxford. Their mission was to understand the physics of the death ray and possibly exploit it as a military weapon. So I firmly believe by us digging deeply into the annals of radar's history, we begin to uncover a hidden classified truth that leads from Tesla to modern UAP technology. So that was your introduction into the public face of a hidden program, which is one of Britain's darkest, most classified secrets. The secret of how Britain and its allies, using advanced physics, have built things out of this world. And you need to stay tuned and subscribe to this channel. In part 2, I'll tell you the universities and the people actually involved in building Britain's darkest weapon system that was tested in Rendlesham Forest. The truth is out there.